only mode.
Hi, good morning, and welcome to this exclusive online event entitled Become a Visual Storyteller, the evolving role of multimedia in content marketing. My name is Mark Hausman, and I'll be your host today. I'm the President and CEO of Strategic Communications Group, an integrated content marketing and sales enablement consultancy that helps business-to-business companies like yours more quickly identify sales leads, nurture prospect relationships, and close more deals. We're fortunate at Strategic to partner with an exceptional group of marketers. We work on field sales campaigns for global brands like Juniper Networks, NetApp, Polycom, ComStore, Software AG, and Blue Coat Systems, as well as thought leadership and sales enablement programs for mid-market companies like Imix Group, Fuel Education, Ironbow Technologies, and CrowdStrike. During the past 18 months, we've seen an increasing amount of audience interest and engagement in the multimedia content that we've been publishing in partnership with our clients. This includes things like video, podcasts, photos, and even infographics. That inspired us to organize today's event. Of course, we then asked ourselves who would be the perfect guest. That's where Joe Witte comes in. Joe and I have spent a lot of time together at a number of industry conferences over the past year, and he has always impressed me with his understanding of the role of multimedia and the specific role that it plays in content marketing initiatives. Plus, Joe's presentation style is both informative and entertaining, making him the perfect guest. Before I invite Joe to join us, let's go through a couple of real quick housekeeping items. First, our discussion is going to last about 20 minutes, which is going to give us a few minutes at the end for Q&A. You're going to see in your window on the right, labeled Chat, a screen that allows you to type in a question, and that will be sent directly to me. I encourage you to do so. In the next day or so, you're also going to receive an email from us with a replay of this discussion along with a copy of the presentation. Plus, you'll also be able to find this presentation and a replay in the Resource Center on Modern Marketing Today. This is an online magazine published exclusively for marketers. The web address for that magazine is www.modernmarketingtoday.com. So let's get started. Please join me in welcoming in Joe Witte of ISEBOX. Joe, good morning. Hope you're doing well today.
I'm doing great. Good morning, Mark.
Tell us a little bit about your professional background and the multimedia content distribution platform that ISEBOX has developed.
You got it. So I started off my career at USA Networks back in the cable industry on the sales side, and then moved into the digital world at DoubleClick, again, predominantly sales and business development, and eventually started my first company, the Travel Ad Network, sold that, and then moved into the small business services sector as a co-founder, COO, but really did everything from marketing, business development, sales for a company called Microburst and Logo Design Guru. And that's really where I got, one, we were providing marketing and branding solutions, but, handled biz dev and marketing there. Sold that a couple years ago. I'm now at ISEBOX handling business development and marketing. It's a really cool PR and event software platform. And it's really used to solve the problem of, hey, I've got all these videos and photos and documents and in some cases audio, and how can I get them out to large groups of people that are scattered and make it easy for them to view and also download? So that's a general concept of what ISEBOX does.
All right, so in my introduction, Joe, I talked a little bit about the increasing interest that our clients have seen in the multimedia content that they've been producing and distributing through their content marketing program. Let me ask you this. Why is multimedia becoming such an interesting and essential part of how a company is communicating to its key audiences?
So I believe today's way of marketing and leveraging content is just an evolution, right? I mean, we've been creating content in the advertising and marketing world since the beginning. Even if you put an ad in the yellow pages, that's still some level of content. But what we're able to do now, and what we found is, hey, when you give something, when you give people something that resonates with them, you're going to get in abundance. And this is just the age-old, whether it's, old religious philosophies or, Buddhist philosophies of that nature. But there's some other extra components of that make it important when we are able to give ideas or knowledge or our time or expertise. And hopefully if we're doing it really well, some form of entertainment, maybe make somebody laugh is a good thing, which is, yes, they're going to remember us because they got something from us that didn't cost them anything. We're going to leave an impression with them. And hopefully that'll have an impact. But it also positions our companies or our individuals and leaders as thought leaders, like, hey, that guy's the expert, and he gave me some information that I'm not going to forget. So, for example, I have 5 kids, and everything in our house is constantly breaking, whether it's by accident or just by use. And in one case, our ice maker broke, and I'm just like, man, I got to call another plumber or ice maker fixer, and it's going to cost me $300 or $500. It's just going to happen. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to give it a go myself. Let me see if I can fix this thing, and order the parts, studied online, watched a YouTube video, and got it in there. It still wasn't working. So I'm like, all right, I'm done. I got to call somebody to fix it. And I called this guy in our town. He's like, listen, I think you can do it. Let me walk you through it. And he walked me through on the phone and was able to work. By him giving me that information, saving me a couple $100 and a significant amount of stress, I have that guy's name now in my Outlook address book, and I know who I'm going to call when something bigger breaks. And so that's kind of that giving to get something back. And ultimately, we're developing relationships through dialogue. So if we're giving people information or videos, whether they post a note and we respond back, or we post an infographic on Twitter and they respond, now we're opening up dialogue with the people that we hope to do business, which is why we're creating content, not just because it's fun, because we want to grow our business.
Okay, so I get it. So the philosophy behind content marketing is this isn't marketing speak. It's not public relations spin. It's not typically how companies have historically communicated to the marketplace. It's more thought leadership, best practices oriented. But still, let's drive to this point here when it comes to multimedia. Why does the visual story have so much impact today?
Sure. So I know that we're going to kind of get into some of the reasons like why visual matters and some data on that. But before we dive into that, I want to talk a little bit about like what do we need to do before then, before we develop our visual content strategy. And the first and foremost thing, which is, in the past we look at companies like the big enterprises, I'm going to call them the haves. The Coca-Colas that have $1 billion to spend on their brand strategy. They hired PR firms, they hired agencies, and they created this content. It could be with commercials they push out through TV, or take the right pictures and push them on the Wall Street, well, not Wall Street Journal, but Washington Post. Like they had their content strategy, and the have-nots, the smaller enterprises, they had to push things through local newspaper. Hopefully they got an ad on there, or through Yellow Pages, somebody's writing content. And that was what we did historically to develop our old school content strategies. But now we can do it ourselves. And by doing it ourselves and going out taking pictures, or creating infographics on Pictograph, or shooting video and putting it up there, we're basically, what we're doing is we're creating our own in-house agency. And that's the strategy, that's the idea, and we know the results. But just to like put things in perspective, it's hard to do. It's hard to do from a matter of, everything in life is on a bell curve, and if the best talent, let's just pretend for a second, the best talent is at agencies, and now, every major company, $5 to $10 million and up, wants to start developing content strategies. Well, now we're going to look at talent. So keep in mind that as companies are developing their content strategy, talent matters. Somebody who's a good writer, good with photography or shooting video, who's sharp at that, it makes a big difference. So, and we're going to go through pain of, hey, we're not going to be very good. We're not going to get very many comments or likes or responses on our content in the beginning. Kind of like Dave Grohl, for the music fans out there. He's like, man, I'm so tired of American Idol. People think they go out there, sing it a couple times, and they're a star. We got in our garage, and we stunk, and we just were really bad for many, many, many years until we got better and better and better. We were hungry, and I think that matters as well with content strategy. So, kind of some other tips before we dive into like why visual content's important. One, it's important to create a consistent voice. Who's your company? Do you want to be the cool, hip company that can relate to the tweens, or are you you're talking to C-level at Fortune 50 companies and you need kind of a button-up approach? Consistency, which is just not giving up on your strategy. It takes years to get thought leadership out there, and people get to see you multiple times. And one thing I want to say is avoid vanilla. And Mark, I'm sure when somebody says, "Hey, who's the most world-renowned morning disc jockey?" Like who comes to mind? Love him or hate him, it's Howard Stern. And because he didn't go in there and try to appease everybody. Now that doesn't always work in a B2B world, but we know who he is, and he's transparent. He's not afraid to speak his mind, and he certainly knows his audience. And I think the last part that we want to get to as far as like a tip when developing content strategy, the ultimate goal, I think the ultimate goal is to have other people generating and writing about your company. And Jay Baer, who's on the marketing circuit, world-renowned, He writes books and gives presentations about why giving good customer support is the new marketing. And if your clients love you, they're going to tell others about you. So I think these are some things. And then I think the next part, I mean, we dive into a little bit about what's this whole visual thing about.
All right, well, let's do that. Let's dive into the visual story here. So I think you set this up really well. We all get kind of the importance of content marketing. Let's talk a little bit about the visual story and why that's so critical.
You got it. So I think one is connecting with people on their terms. So I know for me, when I still go to CNN for some reason, I'm not sure why, but when I go there, I just want quick headlines, what's happening in the world. I usually don't want to watch a video unless there's some headline about a moose attack, and that might entice me to watch a video of some sort, right? But video is not something I want to watch in my news, but when I see a family member post a video on YouTube, I'll probably watch that. When I want to fix something in my house or maybe watch a sports highlight that seemed pretty cool, I'll watch those videos. And I don't know about you, Mark, but when it comes to infographics, it always tends to be the newest thing happening in marketing or PR and what's the stat, but marketing, infographics to me are very powerful. So a lot of it is how we connect to different people in different meetings, and if we can include, here's a quick video on our newest product, here's an infographic on the stats and data to support why it's important, here's a picture of some team members, and then here's the article to support that. Most likely you're going to connect with somebody somehow on one of those and leave a bigger impression and ultimately get them to think about what you're doing. And when they see you and they can think about you and then they're thinking about what you're doing, then hopefully they're going to act and think about your company and contact you when they're ready.
Okay, great. So content marketing, the importance of having a visual story as part of this. You've referenced some kind of broad examples, and we talked a little bit about radio personalities and Howard Stern. You talked a little bit about some of your personal experiences, most notably with a repair requirement at your house. For our business-to-business listeners here, can you share some specific examples about how companies like theirs are integrating multimedia into their content marketing and their public relations and communications programs in maybe a unique and differentiated way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that we've got some good data in here, and I think we understand. Some of these also, just to give a reference, a great book to read is called The Power of Visual Storytelling by Katarina Walter. So if you want to dive deeper in statistics and some stuff, I definitely would reference that, and that's where some of this content comes from. But PR Newswire themselves says, hey, listen, when you include photos and video in your release, which would be a multimedia news release, you have a 70% higher likelihood of getting picked up by the press. And I would probably argue, which is, hey, if you also have a press release that has photos and video, you're going to connect more with buyers. So, for example, in the previous slide was a text press release, which, if you think about it, from the research we've done talking to journalists get sometimes between 30 and 80 releases per day, and they have to decide which one or two of those am I going to write about. So when you get this, it's like, all right, nothing really resonates with me. So when you go to the next slide and you are leading with video and photos, immediately you're going to make a connection with whether it's the journalist or the reader, and thus getting there goes that 70% higher likelihood of pickup. So this was a client of ours, Call of Duty Endowment, through an agency, and they were just blown away by, now we can measure video plays, where it was picked up, they can measure where it went. And actually, here's another example of a client of ours, Lotus. They released a new motorcycle. So I just want to try to imagine, when it comes especially to certain industries, whether it's sports, travel, auto, fashion, when somebody's just talking about it in text, you just can't understand, hey, here's this new dress, or come visit Ecuador and check out these mountains. But when somebody posts a picture, which in this example is Lotus just released a new $130,000 motorcycle, you're like, eh. And then you put a picture up there, and you're like, man, that thing is cool. And if I had a couple extra $100,000 and my wife would let me, I might actually buy that thing, It's just different when you post a picture. So it's just so critical to include videos and photo and multimedia news releases. And I think even more so when it comes down to education, which is what the B2B world is all about. We're educating people about our software. We're educating people about our marketing services. And that's just how they're going to connect as far as, okay, now I can watch a video about what I'm going to learn in this example. So I know we talked about, using it at home and how we connect. And I think in one of the next slide, we get into posting and including photos in Twitter. And Twitter, which we always think about as, having, a finite number of characters to share in, but now we can share photos, and that in Twitter, 76% of content on Twitter that's shared includes a photo. And so when you look at the above text and you look at this example here, you just know you connect and you can understand what you're doing, and thus you get 108 retweets and 63 favorites on there. It just makes a difference.
All right, so to kind of recap what you've shared so far, Joe, is obviously content marketing. It's all about best practices, thought leadership, helping educate a community of prospects and customers and partners. And then in being a visual storyteller, it's important to understand that people digest content in different ways, and that often for many of our audiences, it's the visual presentation of an idea which is easier to understand, it's easier to grasp, it's more engaging. So I get all of this. I'm recognizing now that, all right, maybe we at Strategic even need to be more aggressive in moving our clients into multimedia. So how do I get started? Do you have any recommendations on some resources that I might be able to check out, which would be really good for both Strategic as well as the folks that are joining us here today to start looking at a more aggressive approach to multimedia in their content?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I try to do is relate things to the big company that has a budget and to the little company that doesn't have a budget. One, PictoChart, which is create your own infographic. Super affordable, even free in the beginning. You can create your own infographic really, really easily. So to accompany a blog release, which is usually just text, or a press release with an infographic, I think is really important. GoPro, a good camera, shoot it yourself if you have to in the beginning. And if you've got the budget, hire people, find good creative people that you can hire to shoot content. And oftentimes, I think even when it gets into events, don't over-edit it. And I'll get into this a little bit further. There's a company called Content Launch, and this is going back more into the written content, but you can hire them to provide really, really good quality content writers, and now they're releasing the software to help with that whole content writing process, to keep it on track and measure everything. Hootsuite, I think most people are familiar with that, which is now how do we've got our content, how we can distribute it through social channels, HubSpot, and then ISEBOX, which is really a multimedia content distribution. How can I put that photos, video, documents of any type, audio on a single page, make it easy for people to view, download, and actually track where it went, and who's downloaded the content and distribution. So just some great tools in order to, as we continue to expand and grow our strategy, have a bigger impact.
All right, Joe, so we have had an exceptional group of marketers join us today, and let's really see if we can kind of sum everything up. I always like to ask my guests for a couple of key takeaways or tips or best practices that they can share. So let me hit you up with a challenge here. Can you share for our audience 4 takeaways or tips as it relates to being a visual storyteller, the incorporation of multimedia into a content marketing strategy?
You got it. So, one, I think it's really, really important that we're true to ourselves. We oftentimes, I think, are inclined to, man, that's a great blog. I want to be just like them. Or, that's a really cool video. I think we want to duplicate that, which is incorporate our own personality. In that, an example is Shane Snow from Contently, very understated, very soft-spoken. He doesn't try to be Howard Stern. He doesn't try to be Gary Vaynerchuk. He's himself, and I think that's people connect with him in his own way he shares stories. So be genuine, be ourselves, I think is really important. Be fast. And so one area that ISEBOX excels at is helping events disseminate their content quickly. So I'll often consult with our clients, hey, listen, you had a great speaker up there. He just gave a presentation. Do not take 2 weeks to edit it. Nobody cares. After people are at that show, they saw them, they want to view it, they want to share it, they want to push it out to their peers and even tweet about it. It doesn't need to be seamlessly edited with music and a tie-in, tie-out. Get that live when you have people's attention. And so I think be fast is critical. So a quick example, BMA used ISEBOX, the Business Marketing Association used ISEBOX for their conference this year. All their video views from 2013 combined equaled right around 4,000 video plays. When they put it quickly on ISEBOX right after the show, one speaker, Tim Reister, had more than 7,000 video plays, and combined we're probably looking around 30,000 video plays within 2 to 3 months after the show.
Wow.
So I think speed is critical. It also goes back to aggregating your content, put it in an area where it's easily found, it's easily searched, and well organized. And so the next one, which is, it's not on the slide right now, but I'll say be smart. If you're a small company, know who you're up against. If you don't have the budget and you're David and you're going up against Goliath, don't try to own every single social channel. Don't try to be everything to everyone. Don't try to own the vertical. I'd say develop a niche, pick maybe one social channel, maybe two, maybe even a region, and just own them. And just say, this is our area, this is our backyard, we're going to own this, and everybody in this area on the social channel is going to know who we are. And I think finally I just want to say, which is be awesome. Scott Stratton, he's one of my favorite kind of marketing bloggers. He makes me laugh every time I read, and he points out the obvious, but he's very well engaged. And his point is, if it's not awesome, don't post it. If it's blah and you don't really like it, and you really only had that one reader or that one viewer's opportunity to view it that one time, there's a good chance they may not come back again. So it's probably better to put out 6 to 8 really good quality posts or really good quality emails per year than it is 36 average or sub-average pieces of content. So just be focused on, hey, is this good? Is it interesting? Are people going to connect?
All right, so let me challenge you on something here, because we didn't really talk. One of the tips that you've got, Joe, is be free. And this is something, admittedly, that we struggle with at Strategic, not so much that we would charge for content, but always the issue about putting what we perceive to be high value or premium content behind a registration page. And a lot of our clients will use a marketing automation package. They'll use Eloqua from Oracle or Marketo, and you reference HubSpot here. We also do a lot of work with a marketing automation package called eTrieg. So you've got the ability to take a video and put it behind a registration page, with the understanding that even though I might be decreasing the amount of viewership, because it's such a high-value piece, the folks that are going to sign up for it are really going to demonstrate a high level of interest. Now, we're not charging for that content, but asking people to give us their contact information is kind of like charging, especially in a B2B environment. So be free. Let me ask you about that specifically. What are your thoughts? What do you advise ISEBOX clients when it comes to the issue of, man, registration pages, and do I ask people for their information, or am I just giving everything away?
That's a great question. I think a lot of it depends on what stage your company's at. If you're Gartner Group and people are used and accustomed to paying tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for your information, you're not suddenly going to switch your strategy and say, hey, we're going to give it away for free, right? But if you're just starting out with your content strategy and nobody knows who you are and you haven't positioned yourself as a thought leader yet, you better probably give it away for free until people get engaged and you're slowly starting to measure your page views increase and people are commenting and you're seeing some results. Now, the cool thing about ISEBOX is when you put content on our platform, it can be seen as and viewed for free. But as soon as somebody goes to download that PDF or download that video, we can require them to log in with a social login where we're going to capture their name, company, title, email, location, and build that database. So it really does kill two birds with one stone on ISEBOX. But to that point, I had a little bit of a debate with the folks over at the BMA. They wanted to password protect all their content for the event before the show, just give it to people who paid money to be there. And I said, listen, I prefer the Grateful Dead approach. I think it's better to push content out in the world, get people speaking, build the database. I was fortunate that they forgot to put the password on the lanyard, so they said, hey, listen, for good user experience, let's just open it up. And that's when they saw the difference of 30,000 video plays, really happy speakers, now an opportunity to leverage and market and sell sponsorship on this content, building their database. So I don't want to create a blanket rule. If you have a class that teaches people how to use Adobe Illustrator and they're paying $1,000 for that, I probably wouldn't put that out there for free because it's a specific how-to. You may want to charge for that. But I think generally, when you're just starting out, and if it's something that's going to be outdated in 1 to 2 years, as most marketing information is, or if it's already free on YouTube, or it's not earth-shattering, make it free to some degree. But I don't necessarily see that it's an issue to ask somebody, say, hey, put in your email address to learn more, and then you can download this completely mind-blowing white paper. But it should be good. I'd say if you're going to ask me for something to get me in, it better be good.
It better be awesome. So listen,
Right.
we only have a couple minutes here. I've got a few questions. It looks like we only have time for one question here. So let me hit you with this. So here's the question. Let me read it to you here. So our speaker references the issue of user-generated